Hey, welcome back everybody. This is video 8 in the AP Computer Science Introduction to Java video series. Last time we played, or we built a multiplication game, basically, so if you had a little brother or sister that was learning their multiplication tables, it would quiz them 10 times on multiplication and then tell them how many they got right. So what we're going to do is we're going to adjust that game a little bit. Instead it's going to be a race to see how fast you can get 10 of them right. Okay, so we'll record how much time it takes, tell them how long they took, and if you get one wrong, there's not a penalty other than it took you time. So you may have to answer 13 or 14 questions to get 10 right. So we're going to use a different kind of loop this time. So a for loop is used when you know how many times you want to do something. So in the last game we wanted to do it 10 times. But in this game, we don't know how many times it's going to take the user to get 10 right. So we're going to use something called a while loop and basically say, well, while they don't have 10 right, so while their score is less than 10, keep going, keep asking them questions. So a while loop is better if you don't know how many times you're going to have to do something. So I'm going to teach you that, the while loop. Second, I'm going to teach you how to measure time, so how long something took. And third is, just for fun, we're going to have, every time you get something wrong, we're going to give the user an indication by making a little beep. Okay, so let me just explain two of the things and then we'll hit the computer. So the while loop has this structure. There's a condition, a continuation condition, and then a block of code. And this condition basically says, while this condition is true, then run this block of code. So it'll test the condition, it'll run each of the statements in the code, and then at the end, it'll test the condition again, and if it's still true, it'll run the statements again, and it'll keep going. So obviously your statements should change something regarding this condition, or it'll never end. So in our case, we're going to change the score, and we're going to keep running this while the score is less than 10. And once they hit 10, then we should drop out. That'll be false because the score will not be less than 10, and it'll drop out and show them how long it took. Secondly, this is not on the test, but it's a piece of cake, so I decided to show it to you, and it's kind of fun, is how to measure time. So there's a method I'll show you that shows you the number of milliseconds since January 1st, midnight January 1st of 1970. Maybe that's when Java was invented, I don't know. But at any rate, so you can get that number of milliseconds. So we're going to ask it at the beginning of the game, or we're going to get it at the beginning of the game. And then after they get 10 right, we're going to ask again, so we'll get the other time. And then we'll just subtract the two. So it'll be the end time minus the beginning time, and that'll give us the number of milliseconds basically between these this interval. Make sense? Okay, so let's go to the computer and write our game. Alrighty, so let's write a spec for this game. I just copied the spec from the last game. It's pretty similar. So we're just going to keep asking questions. What is... Oh, I did recall that a semicolon is a little bit easier to read than a question mark. So we keep asking multiplication questions. And then when they get 10 right, we'll say, nice job, that took you X number of seconds. Okay, so it's pretty close to the last game. In fact, we're just going to copy the last game and just make edits to it. So start up a new class called multiplication race. Okay, copy all this code, close. Okay, so you can see the whole thing. Okay, get rid of this. Copy that. You need to change the class name to match your class name that you started with. Okay. Now what we're going to do is, instead of a for loop, see how the for loop did something 10 times? We're actually going to write a while loop. And it has this format, like I mentioned. And what I usually do is like to focus on the middle of the loop first and then do the condition. So we're just going to take this code that was in the middle of the for loop. Now you can tell where the for loop ends. If you put your cursor right there, you can see the other bracket is highlighted, so you can see the matching brackets. So just take the code without either of those brackets, paste it in there. Okay, so we're gonna do, since I don't know my tables, to make it more fun, up to 15, I'm gonna do up to 15. We are not gonna do the number of the question. We don't want the user to know how many times it's taking them. And that's it. So 2 numbers, change that to a semicolon, and then up the score when they get it right. Okay, let's get rid of our other for loop. Okay, and now when do we want to end? We want to end when the score is 10. So this actually has to be written not when you want to end, but a continuation condition. So we're going to say the score is less than 10. So anytime the score is less than 10, which will be true the first time through and each time through, and then finally when it hits 10, it's going to stop doing the while loop. That's the essence of a while loop. Okay, and then at the end we are going to say, let me remind myself, nice job. Nice job. That took you, we'll fill that in a second. Seconds. Okay. All right. Now, so that's that. Now let's talk about the time. So the way you get the current time from 1970, like I mentioned. So at the beginning of the game, you want one variable that is the begin time. Okay. And the function is called system.currentTimeMillis. So current time in milliseconds. Okay. What we're going to do is, just to turn it into seconds, I'm going to divide by 1,000. And this actually is not an integer, so I'm going to turn it into an integer the way we did it before by recasting, which I'll explain in a later video. But you just put an int in front of it, it's going to turn this thing back into an integer, and then stick it in that box, the begin time. And then we're going to do the same thing at the end of the game. We'll call this end time. And then right here we will end time minus begin time. Okay, that should be good. Let me compile, see if I have any mistakes. Yes. What is extra parenthesis? Okay. And then the last thing I wanted to do is do a beep when the user gets it wrong, because otherwise they're not really going to know. So if they get it right, they get an increment to the score, and then we'll do an else. If they get it wrong, now I'm going to show you something you know how to do, which is, this is exactly what I did this morning when preparing for this video. I went into Google. I said, make a beep. Yeah, you can see what I said. Make a beep with Java. And then the site that you will get all the answers from is called Stack Overflow, at least currently, but you can look on other links as well. So I clicked on that, and I scrolled down, and I saw that, and this is the longer form of that. And so I just copied it. I don't know much about it, but I just copied it and gave it a try. And you'll find that you will do that a lot in programming, that you just Google stuff. There's all kinds of helpful people on the web that are always answering your questions, and voila, you can do something that you didn't know how to do, just like I did. So if I get something wrong, I'm going to get a little beep. All right, so let's try it. Multiplication race. Now again, don't make fun of me in the comments, because I don't really know my multiplication table up to 15. But let's see how well I do. Okay, 15. I don't know. 140. 62. 12. Now I heard a beep. I don't know if you heard it because I'm speaking in earbuds, but there is a beep. So I should be able to figure that out. 70 plus 35, 105, 77, 24. There we go. 26 seconds to get 10 right. Okay, so that's basically it. Again, the main thing I wanted to teach you was the while loop, and this is the best kind of example of it, where you don't really know if the user is going to do it in 10 shots or 15 shots or 13 or whatever. So you just keep looping, keep doing your loop while a condition is true, and then once they're done, or something has happened that has upped that condition, like the score hit 10, then it stops doing the loop and it runs the rest of the code. Okay, I will go to the board and we'll recap. Okay, so just to recap, that was kind of a fun thing, the multiplication race. We learned the while loop. This is the for loop and the while loop are the two ways to make a section of code keep running multiple times. You use a for when you know how many times it's going to run, basically. And you use a while when you don't know how many times it's going to run, but after each time it runs, actually before each time it runs, it does a check to make sure you want to run it. So you have kind of a continuation condition, and then in your block of code, you're going to change some variable, no doubt, that is used in the continuation condition. So in our case, it continues as long as the score was less than 10, and in our block of code, we incremented the score if the user got the math problem right. Okay? So that's we'll do lots of while loops in the future, but that's the basic example. Second thing, time and the beep are not on your test. But time is super easy, so that's why I went through it. And then beep is just an example of just Googling stuff and getting an answer like within 60 seconds. I do it all the time for projects that I do. You almost always go to this site Stack Overflow. There's lots of good engineers that are answering the questions all day long as a hobby. So it's really terrific, and that's how I figured out the beep. And that's not in your test either. Lastly, one of the trouble you'll have, not really following the video, but when you get to write your own loops on your own, you have to be very careful. A lot of times you put code inside the loop that really should be before the loop starts or after the loop ends. And you sort of get mixed up as to what needs to go before, in the loop, and after the loop. And I guess the main rule of thumb is you just have to consider how many times you want that line of code to run. So if you have a loop that might, let's say I was really bad at math and it would run 100 times, you have to think through, well, do you need 100 scanners? No, you just need one scanner. You just want to set the score equal to 0 once, but you want to derive math problems 100 times. You want to check if they got the answer right 100 times. You may beep 100 times or more. So that's the code that goes in the loop. And then you want to say good job just once. You want to measure the time just once here, once there. So you just have to think through, this is the structure. You're going to do things before the loop starts, usually. You're going to do things in the loop, of course. That's why you have a loop. And then you do things after the loop. And just think through with each line of code, where do I want this to be running 100 times, or is this just once? And is it before or after? So you'll get the hang of it, but I know that's an early problem that you have as you're learning loops. So that's it. I hope that was fun. Go ahead and tell me how fast you were able to do 10 math problems up to 15 in the comments. I'm sure my score wasn't that great, and you guys could beat it, but I'd be interested in what you come up with. All right, thanks. Okay, bye.